In this episode of Super Seicento, I've got a spring in my I've done that joke before, haven't I? In this episode of Super Seicento, I'm like a coiled spring because there's some more shocking mods to fit to my car. Hello YouTube, Miller Corner here, welcome back to Super Seicento, and today we're going to be doing some suspension mods. And I know what a lot of you might well be thinking, because you've already done some suspension mods to your car, and you'd be absolutely right. About this time last year I fitted 35mm lowering springs all the way around on my car, but the truth is, for as much as it added a kind of firmer, sportier ride and gave the car a considerable drop, I was never truly happy with them, for a simple fact of the matter was, they never really gave the car the kind of firm, planted handling that I was looking for. It still has a fair bit of body roll, even at quite modest speeds. Well, given that we're going to be making the car considerably faster quite soon, I decided that before we do any of that, I want to make sure it handles the way I want it to. So to that end, I've invested in some coilovers. Yep, if you want flat and adjustable handling for your car, this is the way to go about it. Now unfortunately, having a car as obscure as the Seicento means there aren't a great deal of options for coilovers, so I've gone for these TA Technics coilovers all the way from Germany. I've had these personally recommended to me from a few people who use them on their Seicentos and Cinquecentos. They've said the ride's a bit hard, but they handle flat and planted, and they've got some adjustability that of course only coilovers can give, and that for me was enough to convince me to buy them. Now because of the way Seicento suspension works, we've got adjustable coilovers to go on the front, and then sports shocks and lowering springs to go on the back. So the old low lowering springs are coming off, and some awesome new TA Technics coilovers are going on. So without further ado, let's get the car on the ramp and get my car handling properly.
With the car on the ramp and the wheels off, we begin by using a spanner to hold the nuts on the end of the strut. Meanwhile, a rattle gun, an extension in the case of the lower bolt, removes the strut bolts. The lower bolt is reluctant to come out though, so some light persuasion is brought in.
Rubber man, let it don't damage your thread.
Hey, there you go. Science. If they'd told me in science when I was doing science at school, if they'd given it some sort of car application, I probably would have listened more. There you go. With the lower bolts removed, the car is lowered down so that I can reach the strut top. WD-40 loosens the bolts, other penetrating fluids are available, before I undo the selection of bolts securing the strut top to the car. With so many bolts to undo, it's inevitable that you might drop a washer or nut, but if you're lucky, they'll fall straight through.
Oh, fell out through, isn't it?
God, the chances of that happening are about 1,000,000 to 1.
As it turns out, I was right.
You utter Is that it there? Yes, it is.
Nut found, the strut is completely free and can then be easily removed from the car. Then it's over to the spring compressors to compress the spring on the strut so as to undo the top mount nut and remove it. The shock then comes away and it's time to assemble the coilovers. The first of the two supplied nuts is tightened down onto the spring cup before the old top mount is inserted onto it. We make sure it swivels without spinning the shock absorber so as to avoid damaging it, and then the second nut is done up to secure the top mount.
Happy?
Yep. Lovely. Then I excitedly take the assembled coilover to the car and it can be inserted from the bottom into the strut tower. The large selection of nuts, bolts and washers can then be put back onto the strut and tightened down on the top. Make sure the strut bolts are tight but don't go over the top. Shear them and you really are in a world of trouble. The top mount bolts are done up and the car can then be lifted back up to get the coilovers attached to the hub assembly. It's a really tight fit that does require some jiggling, but eventually we're in. These coilovers have oval shaped bottom holes for adjustable camber, so you can go full stance if you want. I want my car to be drivable though, so we push the bottom in as much as possible to get the wheels upright. The bolts are copper greased and done up, and the upper coilover collar is wound up to meet the spring. We'll adjust the front coilovers later, but for now the rear shocks get some WD-40 action and we attempt to tackle the world's most stubborn bolt. Still, nothing a massive breaker bar won't sort. The upper shock bolt is hidden in the floor pan and only has a tiny space to get to it. With the help of an awesome air-powered ratchet and an extension, the upper bolt is seen to and the rear shock is out. Yes! We're free. Next, I pull out the old lowering spring, the whole rear suspension gets a clean out from an airline, and then I put the new lowering spring in, making sure to line it up with the indent it has to sit in. Next, the new rear shocks.
Yellow means fast. Yellow.
Word of warning, do not remove the plastic strap on the shock absorber until it's installed, otherwise it'll expand and you'll never be able to compress it enough to make it fit. The upper bolt holds it in, I bolt up the bottom half, repeat the whole process on the other side, and we've successfully fitted new suspension all round. Next we have to adjust the coilovers, making sure they sit even on both sides. We measure from the bottom of the available thread to the second collar.
The bottom of the thread is 43. 43.
Then it's onto the other side and we wind the upper collar up just enough to hold the spring. It's always best to start modest with your drop and to wind it up further to lower the car more once it's all settled in and you know exactly how low it's going to sit.
That's 43.
With the adjusted height identical on both sides, the car can then be lowered onto its wheels just barely, while we use the provided C-spanner to tighten both collars up with some of the car's weight on the suspension. The new suspension will need a full alignment and a couple of weeks to settle in properly, but for now here are my impressions on the first test drive. Maiden voyage on the coilovers, here we go. Immediately feels a little bit harder. Oh, that immediately feels more planted. Oh, that immediately feels so much better. It's not horrendous over the bumps. I genuinely expected it to be a hell of a lot harder than that. Oh, it doesn't have the roll anymore. Oh, it's so much better now. Right, let's chuck it in here. Oh, yeah. Oh, it just goes where you point it now without rolling around all over the place. It's so good. Even just that first test drive, already loving that. So there we have it. TA Technics coilovers fitted all the way around on the Super Seicento. And I have to be honest, it wasn't actually that difficult of a job to do. Having done the lowering springs beforehand, I already knew how to take the suspension out of the car, dismantle it, assemble it, and put it back in the car. So it was simply a matter of taking the old stuff out and putting much better new stuff in. I'm going to do a proper review of these coilovers at a later date once they've bedded in fully and the car's had a full alignment done, but I can already tell you that they are worlds better than the old lowering springs. I'm now more confident than ever to drive this car hard and that it is capable of taking the power that's in store for it. And that's right, after months of building up to it and teasing it, it's finally gonna happen, because very soon the next proper build video for Super Seicento will be giving this little beast the power that I've always wanted to give it to properly make it fast, and I simply cannot wait. That's a story for a day very soon indeed, but for now, thanks very much for watching the video, everybody. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a big old thumbs up and also subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified when a new Miller Corner video is released. But for now, thanks once again for watching, everybody, and have a brilliant rest of your day. See you soon and have a good one.